Sound down. Yeah. We good? All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Leah LaRue, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our second quarterly planning initiatives webinar. We are collaborating all over City Hall to plan Atlanta together for one bright future. And I'm so happy to have all of you here with us, along with my colleagues who you'll hear more from in just a moment. I, of course, do not ever take for granted when we have people who are so committed that they're willing to spend time on a weekday evening. I know many of you have worked a long day today or done other things. So the fact that you would take your time to spend a couple of hours with us to learn more and to understand more about what's going on in the Department of City Planning and to understand a little bit about how it works in collaboration with other city departments and the work that they're doing. So thank you again for being here. I do want to just mention that your participation both in the webinars that we are now having quarterly, thanks to the success of the first one we did in February, but your participation in the webinars, in your NPU meetings, in your neighborhood association meetings, at really any opportunity to engage publicly, council meetings, et cetera, is what directly impacts the planning efforts that we have underway to continue to encourage future participation. So tonight, you'll hear briefly from Commissioner Prince, the Commissioner of the Department of City Planning, and then we'll have a brief panel discussion to talk about all of the, several, not all, but several of the planning initiatives that are currently underway. And then we'll take some questions from you. So similar format to the first time, but this time, instead of individual presentations, we'll have a bit of a panel discussion and then we'll take questions after that. Thank you again for being here. And without further ado, I will introduce you to my commissioner, Commissioner Janae Prince.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here. Thanks for coming to our webinar. I just wanted to update all y'all on the projects we brought to you the last time we did this. We have gone out to all of the NPUs and gotten a lot of feedback on them. So we kind of know what your questions are. So hopefully we'll address those. But if we don't, please put them in the chat, right, Leah? Okay. So last time we came out and talked to y'all, we talked to you about the party house ordinance, the short-term rentals ordinance, the tree protection ordinance, and the side yard setback variance for saving trees. So let me just give you a quick update on each of those. And I gotta say, all the feedback you gave us really helped us make those better. We've had great participation, and I went to a lot of NPU meetings, and the deputy commissioners did as well, and it was great. And thanks for all that great feedback. So just to tell you what's happening with each one, the party house amendment, this is the one that says you can't be renting a short-term rental to throw a party in, a noisy, crazy party, and charge admission and turn it into a club. Can't do that. Now that ordinance was already in place, but remember, we reworded it so it was much easier to interpret and much easier for the police who enforce this ordinance, much easier for them to enforce. The short-term rentals ordinance is still in the Community Development Human Services Committee. It's on hold at this time. Let's see, the tree protection ordinance is also held in Community Development Human Services, but the side yard setback for saving trees, that one is waiting for the tree protection ordinance to be adopted. So that one is sitting with the zoning committee, right? That's right. Okay, just want to make sure I'm telling you the right thing. Now, Doug Young will tell you what's happening with the comprehensive development plan. So I'm not going to go into that, and Kieta Holmes can tell you about zoning. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming to our webinar, and let us know what questions you have, because I don't want to go off into the weeds unless it's something you want to hear. So just let us know. I'll be here the whole time, but I am going to turn off my camera now.
All right, thank you so much, Commissioner Prince. And we're going to go ahead and get started in our panel discussion. Just real quickly, housekeeping rules. The microphone that we're using, it's this one, right? Mm-hmm. The microphone that we're using picks up every noise. So be cautious of the sound of paper and other things that may interfere with the microphone and cause folks to not be able to hear. And with that said, I'm going to ask each of you, if you don't mind, to please introduce yourselves, starting with Doug, and then Tara, then Kieta, and then, better yet, Doug, then Kieta, then John, and then Tara. Doug.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Doug Young. I'm the director of the City of Atlanta's Office of Design, which is responsible for the city's strategic planning, public space, and historic preservation work. Nice to see everybody.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kieta Holmes. I'm the director of the Office of Zoning and Development, and my office is responsible for all of the zoning administration for the City of Atlanta.
John? Oh, we can't hear John. We'll come right back to you, John, while we try to resolve your sound issue, and we'll head over to Tara.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Tara Buckner, and I'm the urban planner for the City of Atlanta Department of Parks and Recreation. And out of our office is the Trails ATL plan.
Thank you so much, Tara. And John, are you ready yet? Not yet. Okay, so I introduced myself to everyone at the beginning. I'm Leah LaRue. I'm the director of I have the distinct pleasure of being the director of the neighborhood planning units for the City of Atlanta's Department of City Planning. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I think we should start with, and John, whenever you are ready, just interrupt or send a note or something to let us know you're fixed, and we'll come right back to you and work you in here. Let's start with the big picture. Plan A lays out a long-term vision for Atlanta's future. How is that vision translated into real actionable steps?
Great question, Leah. So Plan A has a couple of features that really follow up on the back end of that process. As you might know, we're nearing the end of the formal planning process. We're going to adopt that Plan A in July. We have a few last city council meetings to take care of. End of this month in June, and hoping for that adoption in July. But when we complete that process, we're really not done with planning, right? It's an ongoing process. But I want to point out two things in particular in Plan A that are really concrete, kind of on the ground kind of examples that folks can keep track of and be monitoring as we go forward. One is, as folks probably know, Plan A sets the development pattern, the land use patterns for the city of Atlanta. And Ms. Holmes will talk a little bit more about how that relates to zoning, but think of this as the bigger vision document for the city of Atlanta about where we want things to go and how we want them to be arranged. So that provides the framework of which development decisions are made in the city of Atlanta. And that will be the case as soon as Plan A is adopted. The second point I want to make about Plan A is that in that document, if you're familiar with it or you participated in the process, we generated a list of projects that we thought were important to prioritize around the city of Atlanta. And they become part of what's called the Community Work Program. And that's a big name for a list of all kinds of projects, be they transportation, environmental, housing, planning, climate resilience, recreation, parks, what have you, that were identified during the planning process. And then we have listed so that we can start to work on with our sister agencies, funding and logistics to get those projects done. The third thing, I said there were two things, but there's a third thing as well. The third thing is that the Plan A provides that citywide, that high-level vision for our future. But we know there are individual parts of the city of Atlanta that need more discussion, need more conversation, resolve some more unusual circumstances, otherwise drill down a little bit into that part of the city of Atlanta's future. So we're going to start doing that after we finish Plan A, through what's called the small area planning process. So you'll hear more about that later this year, but I just want to give that quick little introduction about this idea of working around the city of Atlanta in a rational fashion to get more in-depth conversations about neighborhoods' futures.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Kieta, Zoning 2.0 is a major tool to make part of that vision, how and where private development occurs, real. What are the proposed key changes from the current code, and how do they reflect the city's regulatory needs now and for the future?
Thank you, Lee, for that question. One thing that is most important for everyone to understand is that the proposed zoning ordinance is going to be plain talk or plain speak. Currently, if you download any section of our zoning ordinance, it is very text heavy. It is black and white print, and there are very few graphics that direct anyone to have a full understanding of what is required from a regulatory perspective. So that's one of the hallmarks for the new code. So it'll be very, very general and for everyone to understand. The other thing is, if you've been a part of the process since 2016, you will know that we, the department in the city, has a very distinct policy related to preserving neighborhood character. That has been something that has been iterated in the comprehensive development plan for quite some time, and we have been providing or creating text and regulations associated with preserving neighborhood character, whether it's the size or the shape of the building, whether it is the characteristics related to the porch, whether it's the characteristics related to roof pitch. Those kinds of things will be found in the zoning ordinance that is proposed, and it will be level setting it across the entire city so that no one has any type of different characteristics than others other than the unique character for that specific neighborhood. Also, what we're doing is we are standardizing all of our city standards. If you've ever been in a conversation with anyone in the Office of Zoning and Development, we talk a lot about quality of life districts, and those are the districts that have a specific street safety and design controls. And those are policies that are actually best for the entire city. So you'll see regulations related to data centers and drive-throughs and self-storage that is approximated across the entire city. You'll see streetscape standards, and what you have now is a few sidewalk standards that are in some districts and a few streetscape standards in other districts, but those will be standardized to be one type of streetscape standard. Also, we'll have some urban design requirements for all buildings to adhere to, whether it is a residential or a non-residential use. And then lastly, what we're doing is we're going to consolidate some of the districts that were actually similar districts, but were called something different and didn't really act in the same way based upon when it was actually written into the code. So we'll do that as well as standardize some of the districts. And what the next thing that is, we'll also be providing a form and a use package. So whatever the form of the building is, it can be a big box or a small box. It could be a round box. It could be a triangle box. Whatever the box is, that is the form of the building based upon that form district. And then we'll take a use and add it together. And the form and the use will create the zoning district. And those two items will be allow neighborhoods to customize the types of things that they want to see. So it could be a triangular box that was designed to be a residential structure, but inside of it, the use package will allow it to be a non-residential use to allow sometimes those small interior stores in neighborhoods. And the last thing is we have created a few new districts that makes that drive the point home to make customization even more clear to neighborhoods. So there's a residential flex neighborhood that allows neighborhoods to kind of figure out what that flex in their neighborhood would be, so they can give a little bit more density next to a single family home if they choose to, or they can make it multifamily up to a certain level based upon how they turn the dial on the zoning district.
That's a really exciting change for Atlanta. Looking forward to it. Moving on to trails, Tara, Trails ATL connects one part of the Plan A vision to the ground, literally. What are the main components of the plan and how will it expand the trail network citywide?
Okay, thank you for the question. So first of all, the Trails ATL plan is going to do something pretty amazing. It's going to bring trails that are available to all to the entire city. The goal is to have this trail network expansion that takes our 80 trails that we have today all the way up to 525. It is a high-level plan, and like I said, it connects all parts of the city. You'll be able to go from one end of on the east side on a trail, either walk the trail all the way to the other end of town, or hop on the MARTA from time to time. Take the Silver Comet Trail all the way to Alabama. Go as far north as possible and as south as possible. So the trail network is an alternative way of providing transportation for short trips. It provides health opportunities that may not exist where we don't have sidewalks just yet. It provides leisure and much more recreation and connection to our parks. Our plan, the major components of the plan are looking at our existing trail network, and then also going by district, identifying trails within the districts and connecting those trails to each other. And then finally, there's one special aspect. There's the Emerald Necklace, which is a series of trails that will take you around Southwest Atlanta. The trail plan is written in 3 phases, and the first phase has been identified and such that it is equitably distributed, that every district is going to get a trail in the first phase, and that's the trails.
Now that's exciting. All right, we're going to see if John is ready. John, if so, cannot hear you, John. Oh, man. Sorry, John.
Hello, 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 hello.
Okay. That works. And I was going to say it's possible that others could hear you and we just couldn't, but that's perfect. That works. We can hear you.
Great.
So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself first, and then I'll ask you a question.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm John Saxton, Mobility Planning Director in ATL DOT. In our group, in addition to supporting planning efforts for transportation planning and partnering with parks and city planning on their related planning efforts, we focus on safety and mobility. So our Vision Zero work, Atlanta Streets Alive, Safe Routes to School, those are all many of our programs that we house in the Office of Mobility Planning.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I will tell you, as someone who attends a couple of MPU meetings here and there, that's a joke. Someone who attends almost all of them regularly, I hear a lot of discussion around transportation. It's a major concern in general for residents and for neighborhoods. With transportation being a major focus of Plan A and a concern across the city, how does the new Comprehensive Transportation Plan, or CTP, because we love our acronyms, how does the CTP build on past work by ATL DOT and our regional transportation partners?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're not, I'll say just on the CTP, we're not married to CTP as an acronym. So if somebody else wants to submit some good ideas in a chat for a brand like Trails ATL, you could save us probably tens of thousands of dollars in consultant time if you want to suggest a good name for us. But it's a great question, Leah, about how we can build on previous planning work. The last time that the city did a citywide transportation plan was 2018, and that was done by the Department of City Planning. So this is actually the first transportation plan that ATL DOT will do since its existence. So that is kind of one of the many things that has changed since 2018. But in addition to that, we have, Atlanta voters in 2022 voted for the Moving Atlanta Forward Tees Boston bond package, which provided hundreds of millions of dollars of transportation improvements. In addition to the trails plan that Tara just described, there have been a lot of other related transportation efforts, including the More MARTA program, which was identified in 2019. And then in 2018 and 2019 was when we saw the deployment of scooters or shareable micromobility devices, which account for 2.5 million trips in the city each year. So 2018 maybe does or maybe doesn't sound like a long time ago, but a lot has changed since then, and a lot of impacts from the pandemic have changed how people get around, how people commute, the increase in deliveries. So a lot of changes and a lot of competing needs for public right-of-way that this plan is looking to chart kind of what the future 5 to 15 years looks like for transportation in the city.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about public engagement and returning to Plan A. How did the public input shape the plan, Doug? And what's next for community engagement as we move towards the expected adoption in July and even beyond that?
Great. Yeah. Well, the public engagement and public input was the critical part of Plan A on two real different levels. And I want to sort of go in reverse in time. So one of the things that we did when we started with Plan A is we looked at the already adopted small area plans that neighborhoods had already worked on, right? So we did not try to reinvent the wheel as far as input from those plans from the past. Now we did look at plans in the last 5 to 10 years that have been adopted, but those plans themselves had public input that by extension was brought into Plan A. So if you were a neighborhood that had a small area plan or a master plan or a vision plan for your neighborhood from 5 years ago, we reviewed that plan, extracted all the land use commentary, transportation commentary, housing, whatever the topic was, and then use that to shape either those chapters of the Plan A itself, the narrative, or in the case of the land use in particular, we use that to shape any updates to the land use patterns that are a key component of governing the city's future development. So that's sort of our starting point, sort of the baseline of which we left from. But then after we had done that, folks who had a chance to participate might remember that in our round 2 workshops, we had sort of classic sit around the table with maps, planning conversations, particularly about land use patterns around the city of Atlanta. And they were 3 or 4 neighborhoods were the focus of each given conversation. And we asked folks, based on your small area planning work previously, or based what was in Plan A before, does this land use pattern, does this pattern of development still fit your perspective on your neighborhood's future? In most cases, that was consistent, right? That even though there might have been a few pieces here and there of the neighborhood's future land use development being different, most of the city of Atlanta and most of the neighborhoods wanted to keep their trajectory the same from what they had previously had conversations with in their small area plans or in the last Plan A from 2021. So if you layer this year's input with building on input from previous planning work, I think that the public input had a great deal of influence on the Plan A document, and particularly the land use and development sides of that. But beyond that, we also had, up to now, we've had 4 drafts that have been posted on the project website, and through a nifty software called Conveyo, you could actually comment on the drafts as if you were editing them, you're redlining them at home, right? You could put a comment up in the text and see where other folks have commented as well. And then we reviewed all those comments, tracked them, created a log, and then revised or updated text or answered the question the case may be to make sure we got that accurately reflected in the content. Another part of that I want to point out is that as folks who, again, might be familiar with what Plan A is, this is the comprehensive development plan. The word comprehensive is key there because it covers all the topics that we need to be concerned about that help manage the city of Atlanta's future. So each of those topics, if you will, might correlate to a city department or a sister agency that is more specialist in that area. So for example, the transportation chapter of the comprehensive development plan, Plan A, we leaned on our partners like John and his colleagues at Department of Transportation to help make sure we got that content right, and particularly reflected that department's most current work program, so that this document also captured public input from other processes, right? So that if the Transportation Department had got input on the project list or moving Atlanta forward list from the past, we want to make sure that got folded in as up to date as we could with Plan A. So you have both content from before, public input from before, current day input, and then input from our related agencies all got molded into Plan A. Now going forward, I want to go back to the topic I introduced just a few minutes ago, which was the small area planning process, right? Is having the ability and the interest in having more in-depth discussions with smaller portions of the city of Atlanta, generally neighborhoods, right? And based on the length of when a plan has been adopted or having any plan at all, and other criteria, figuring out how we can help individual neighborhoods with their neighborhood conversations. In addition to that, for folks that we're not helping directly, we're also going to be providing some guidance on neighborhoods that are able to do their own planning work so they fit in and help us understand their conversations better through some smaller planning guides, right? So even if you aren't going to have us doing the plan with you all directly, there'll still be a structure and a format that we want folks to be following if they're able to do that on their own, or they wanted to update their information on their own.
Well, I love that. I appreciate that. I'm very glad to hear that. I hope everyone is also glad to hear that. Kiera, how is feedback from residents being incorporated into zoning 2.0? What are some of the common themes you're hearing so far?
So common things when we released the discussion drafts were a lot of discussion around accessory dwelling units and how many accessory dwelling units were permitted in zoning districts. There was a lot of feedback about just understanding what the current zoning of the district permitted and what those heights were in those districts that we were converting to the new form and use district. We've had conversation related to what the size of a family is. We've had conversation related to the definition of a family. We've had conversations related to all sorts of things that the zoning ordinance regulates. And one, it just brought a reality to a lot of people of what the zoning ordinance does regulate. I will take everyone here back a few years, actually. In 2022, we launched the Idea Labs, and we talked about very big things, mobility and housing and all kinds of things related to the things that are in the zoning ordinance. And then we kind of pared that down. We brought in and had sessions on the focus workshops, and those focus workshops kind of teased out those bigger ideas to create text. And that text became what is now the discussion drafts. In each of the discussion drafts, modules 1, 2, and 3, and then the information related to the sign and density bonuses are all on our project website. And like Doug, also the project website also provides a process and a way for persons to make direct comments onto those discussion drafts. Those discussion drafts, ideas, comments, phone calls, emails, back and forth conversation, in the hallway conversations, all will be a part of what is the text that will be released on Monday, June 2nd, which will be the first draft of the full and complete zoning ordinance.
Awesome. Tara, let me ask you a question, because you just completed a really robust engagement process with Trails ATL. Similarly robust to the engagement that we did with Plan A and with Zoning 2.0, which is still ongoing. What lesson have you learned from the community or from engagement with the community on ATL?
I'm sorry. And thank you for the question. I think the the biggest lesson that we learned is people want trails. I've had people say, just as a statement, I like trails. I want trails in my community. I think a lot of young people are very interested in trails because maybe they don't drive. We've had a lot of interest in having more skate parks and opportunities to use wheels that aren't automobiles. So the trails bring that opportunity to the city of Atlanta. Had obviously great success with the trails that we have in place now. And so what I have heard is more trails. There is some concern that that when we talk about trails, people want to have places to go. And that was the first question we asked in our public engagement was, where do you want to go? And so some people said, we want more access to commercial spaces in our neighborhoods. We want more access to health. We want more access to schools. We want our kids to have an opportunity to be able to walk to school. And of course, the thing that I'm most known for is parks. People want access to parkland. And so we have tried to address that within these 3 phases that we are proposing. And then, of course, I think the importance of equity. I think that there has been some concern over sidewalk promises that haven't yet come into fruition, and trails have the opportunity to bring some walkways to some communities that haven't traditionally had them. So I think also access to the Beltline, having trails citywide is going to bring more access to that donut around the city of Atlanta, and again, more commercial opportunities, more parks, and more schools.
Well, you answered my next question. So thank you for that. That was helpful. All right, I'm going to go over to John. John, what are some transportation programs or projects the new CTP, is that what we're going to call it tonight at least?
For now.
What are some transportation programs or projects the new CTP is expected to scale up or reinforce?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is safety. So I didn't mention before, but in addition to one of the things that has happened since the last transportation plan was done was that we completed our Vision Zero action plan. And for those who don't know, Vision Zero is our goal as a Department of Transportation and as a city to eliminate traffic fatalities. And our target year is by 2040 to be eliminating traffic fatalities in the city, which during COVID is another thing that occurred. It peaked in the city. So in 2022 and 2023, we had 100 traffic fatalities in the city, where in 2019 it was in the range of the 50s for the 5 previous years. It's since come back down to around 60 from last year, but the goal is 0. So the next transportation plan, to back up a little bit, safety was a key sort of prioritization component for the 2022 Moving Atlanta Forward T-SPLOST and bond package. So a lot of the projects that people might be familiar with in T-SPLOST 2.0 are really focused on safety and providing safe and multimodal ways for people to get around the city. But we think, the next plan is going to double down on that and identify, really, these are the projects, these are the streets that we need to do something about from an engineering and capital projects perspective to make a difference. Previous planning work and the Vision Zero action plan identified that a small minority of the streets in the city of Atlanta account for the vast majority of fatalities and severe injuries. And so those are the streets where we need to target our efforts, in addition to, building in many of the projects that are identified in the trails plan and other efforts. So I think that's the biggest focus, is drilling down on the Vision Zero action plan and identifying the projects that are going to get us to 0 from a safety perspective.
Awesome. I'm going to put, well, I won't put any of you on the spot. I'll put all of you on the spot and just ask for any of you, what in your engagement with the public on these various plans and efforts, what was something that surprised you in your feedback from the public, from the communities? Was there anything that you heard out there that you found surprising or that you didn't know going into this?
Well, I'll say, given that, the city of Atlanta has this wonderful MPU process that really gives the community an opportunity to have a a more articulated voice on the issues and helps us be more transparent. I was really surprised that that people wanted to have even more public engagement. And especially around trails, and there are great concerns about what that circulation is going to look like when the whole trails plan is built out.
Okay. Thanks, Tara. Yeah, I could have told you that.
I should have asked.
Yes, we have all the questions. We love engagement. Anybody else surprised by anything you learned out there or heard from the public?
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't something that was surprising to me. That was not surprising to me, but is the continued level of commitment to folks who want to participate in the future of their city of Atlanta. We in the Department of City Planning, but also Department of Transportation and Parks and Recreation, ask a lot of our interested residents and property owners and business owners, because we want to hear what they have to say. And we had great participation in Plan A altogether, and really partnering with Zoning 2.0 as far as some of those conversations. But it's always heartening to know that folks really care about the future of their city of Atlanta. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we reflect that sincerely in all the documents and the procedures and programs we either create or have to manage on their behalf, because that sincerity needs to follow all the way through to a project actually occurring or a program getting started or whatever the case may be.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Leah. I think there is a misnomer that I was happy to know was a misnomer, was that zoning and land use and transportation and all the things that the city departments are tasked with doing are not just for one particular stakeholder group. It ranges from people who are very young or just starting out, like new professionals, all the way up to persons who are more mature and have lived in the city for 40 or 50 years. So it's not, that was really surprising to me, that it's not just one particular group is interested in this. It's lots of people from different and varying backgrounds that are interested in the work that we do.
That is interesting. I appreciate that. I wanted to point out that part of the reason that we are having this conversation tonight is that, to your point, Doug, we indeed are pulling a lot on the public. We're testing new ideas with the public. We're presenting our proposals. We're saying, this is what we have in mind. What do you think about it? We're giving you things to react to. We're planning with you. We're saying, what is your big vision? What is your big idea about this? Or what do you want to see in your community? Or, as Tara pointed out, what are you trying to get to? Where would you take a trail in your community? We're all asking, to Kietta's point, multiple groups these questions, and we heard from members of the public, hey, are y'all coordinating on this stuff, or is it just transportation over on the fourth floor doing transportation things and planning over at the studio on Mitchell Street doing planning things, and Parks and Rec over on Peachtree doing Parks and Rec things or doing trails? And then zoning 2.0, are y'all upstairs on the third floor just writing or rewriting the zoning code without working together and collaborating together and coordinating all of these planning efforts? Because we do want to hear from everybody, not just those that are interested in this one thing or that one thing, but we want to coordinate all of the planning efforts that we have. So, all right, the next question that I have is for all of you. It's kind of a closing question, but across all of these different plans and projects, what does success look like 5 years from now? What kind of change should residents and the folks on this call, what kind of change should they see or feel or experience if we get this right? What does it look like for us to get it right?
Leah, from my perspective, in the office that is working with long-range planning and public space and history and historic preservation, and someone who lives in Atlanta as well, it's when I think about the future of the city of Atlanta and what is a better place for me or folks I know is a city that has quality choices for folks. And that relates to how to get around the city of Atlanta, right? Some folks are inclined to walk or some bike or take the car or the bus or whatever the case may be. We want all those choices to be quality choices that are safe, reliable, what have you. We want quality choices for folks who where to live, right? Some folks want to live in a house, some folks don't want to take care of a house. They want to live in an apartment or whatever the case may be. We want those choices to be options for folks to consider that are realistic, that are sustainable, that are reflect the diversity of folks who want to live in the city. We want to have those choices reflect their options as well. And the same goes with where folks hang out, where they go to play a ball game, whatever the case may be, is that you have a city of choices so that all the parts of the city of Atlanta have the same opportunity to have the same or similar choices.
I love that.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that just from a transportation perspective, because I think that, this wasn't something that surprised me necessarily, but I think something that we heard a lot in partnering with planning and attending some of the Plan A and CDP events was that people want choices when it comes to transportation, and too many people don't have a choice, right? Whether that is they only have the option of driving alone or they only have the option of taking public transit. People, and this is not, it's in our varying activities in our lives. There are days that we want to be able to drive. There are days that we want to be able to walk or bike or take transit. It's not just you are one type of user all the time, but people want to have, depending on the day, depending on the event, depending on where you're going, you want to have options in terms of how it gets around. So I would say that, a goal, it is a great question, and a goal for the CTP is that it provides sort of a realistic roadmap to give people options. I think building off of the previous plan, it identified some what we call mode shift goals in terms of thinking about the total percentage of trips that happen in the city of Atlanta, what we think from a transportation and congestion and environmental perspective that we need to dial down the number of single occupancy vehicle trips and increase everything else, whether that's a shared trip, whether that's taking transit, walking, biking, just giving people more options for how they get around. I think that's one of the things that I would love to see the upcoming CTP provide is a roadmap for how we get to some of those mode shift goals. So I think providing choice, providing options, I think is a big, an important metric.
I like that theme, a city of options or choices. As it relates to Parks and Rec, obviously we are most concerned that we would like to see every resident of the city of Atlanta within a 10-minute walk of a park or green space. We want to see that we have closed the intersectionality of housing and parks and green space, that you will be able to walk outside of your house and get some real good exercise, that we have somehow turned the page or gotten a little closer to having a healthier city, having healthier options for our young people and healthier options for our seniors. That these trails will allow people to go to neighborhoods that are somewhat disconnected because of barriers, that they'll be able to use those, that space will be fully used, and that people, I think, ultimately will be happier and use our new playgrounds that we have been able to build with Moving Atlanta Forward bond fund. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Success for the zoning ordinance adoption would look like buildings and places for people that are not just sterile, they're not just boxes with balconies. They are actual spaces for people to utilize, whether that's residents or those persons who live and or work nearby. That it is development that incorporates Tara's trails in a cohesive way, so that when you walk out of the building into the trail, that it's seamless and it's not some kind of drop off or dead space for you. Or with respect to John, that there are sidewalks and streetscapes available for persons to walk throughout their neighborhoods and to connect to other places throughout the city without having to get into a car, because the network with regard to streets and sidewalks is complete or near complete. And then with regard to Doug, that all of his elements, not only land use, but all of his elements in the comprehensive development plan are visualized through all of the built environment that private developers provide to us.
Awesome. Well, now we have our roadmap and we know what success looks like. So we'll be working towards that. I would add, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that for me and for the team that I work with every day, for us, success looks like residents and stakeholders feeling like they were heard. And that doesn't always mean that you get whatever you want, because we heard you say you want this pie in the sky, so we're giving you this pie in the sky. It really does mean that you had opportunities to be heard, you had opportunities to weigh in, meaningful, real opportunities, not like dropping a note in a box or sending an email and never hearing a response, but real opportunities to engage. And I can tell you the folks that are on your screen right now are folks that are out there in the community, that attend MPU meetings, that attend community engagement sessions. They're touchable, they're reachable. You can have conversations with them. You can pitch ideas to them and get responses and get feedback. And I think that for me is a piece of what success looks like, because you want to be heard. You want to know that, or at least we want to, and I want to know that residents have the opportunity to be heard and to be considered. You guys are the experts in your communities. We say that around here all the time. You're the experts in your communities. You're the experts in your neighborhoods, and we care to hear your feedback. So with that said, I will thank my colleagues for your answers to these questions and for participating in this discussion. Thank you all so much. We really do work together on this and other fun projects. And I think we'll open the floor for questions, yes? And I think we have some already. So I'm going to get started reading these questions. We will just, on the housekeeping front, we will answer as many questions as we can. We will, if there are still questions in the queue when it's time for us to close the webinar, we'll record those questions and get answers to those questions and post them. If you have a comment to make, we may not read the comment out loud, but we'll certainly read the comment. The panelists will read the comment. But if you have a question, please leave that under the Q&A and we'll get ready to go through that now. It is helpful if, I think most of the questions that I see right now are, it's pretty obvious who they are going to, but if not, if you have a question that's kind of vague, it may be helpful to tell us at least whether it's a question for John, for Doug, Tara, or Kieta. All righty, first up is, it sounds like the MARTA expansion was approved in 2019, John. When is it estimated to be completed?
Yeah, so the MARTA board approved the program of projects in 2019, but that is funding that is intended to go for 40 years, so $2.5 billion in 40 years. So that is like the term of those projects, and there's a set of projects that are kind of near term that you've probably heard about now. You know, if you've heard about more MARTA projects that are in design or under construction now, those are that's the first tier of projects, but then there's kind of a second tier of projects that were, I think, scheduled to start in the 2030 timeframe. So the funding goes from roughly 2016 to 2056.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that, John. Kiera, when will we get the complete zoning 2.0 for review?
June 2nd, 2025.
Ooh. June 2nd, 2025. Will that be on the website or?
It will be posted to the project website, yes.
Awesome. And everybody knows the project website is?
ATL zoning.
atlzoning.com is where you can go on June 2nd to get the complete zoning 2.0 for your review. All right. How much of all the comments and input on neighborhood planning and character comes from people who own houses in the neighborhood and have a vested interest in maintaining the same character, not increasing housing, diversifying housing, et cetera? Were renters engaged, unhoused advocates for those groups? Doug?
Yeah, I can speak to the Plan A process and the Plan A in-person meetings we had. I would say that, first of all, we did not track people's property ownership status when they registered for meetings. But I would say that based on my experience, having gone to many of those meetings, that most of the folks that participated in those conversations were property owners. Most likely many of them were homeowners as well. And in fact, we had some folks come to us asking why there were not more renters and folks who were not single-family homeowners participating in the process. So I would add to that, beyond the question, I would add is that it was important for us to try to get as many voices in the room as we could. One of the ways we tried to do that was having both in-person and virtual sessions that were, pre-scheduled, your more traditional community engagement kind of conversations at, known locations around the city, recreation areas, what have you. We also had what were called conversations with planners, where either neighbor groups or advocacy groups or folks interested in a particular topic reached out to us and said, we'd like to have a special conversation or an additional conversation about this theme or this part of the city of Atlanta, that particularly happened through the NPUs. So we had a fair number of conversations with planners with NPUs. We also had them with a couple different subject matter specific groups around the city of Atlanta. The third way, of course, was that online tool, which of course is available 24/7. That included both ways to comment on the document, and we had survey responses where you could actually provide input on the maps themselves or general survey questions. I would say that one of the challenges we have in planning in the city of Atlanta in general, and this will be something that CTP will have to be concerned with as well, is how to increase the diversity of voices in the process. One of the things we've learned over the last couple of years is that having a weeknight meeting means that folks who have commitments on weeknights because they have a job or they have childcare or they have elder care or they are at school don't get to participate in a live meeting. So we need to keep switching up the times of day. We need to make sure we have well managed and quality virtual options going forward. As some folks might know on the call, many, if not almost all, the NPU meetings are now virtual, and we've seen attendance go up generally across the board for those, which we were actually kind of surprised at, frankly, after the pandemic waned. So we want to make sure we increase those choices because, as Leah pointed out earlier, one of the measures of success for any of our planning work is having an opportunity for folks to participate and hopefully be part of the consensus building process. Not everybody will get what they want, but we do want folks' voices to be heard. So, but the majority of folks were property owners and often homeowners in the process, in the Plan A process.
Thank you, Doug. And Kiera, How do we get a copy of the amended administrative variance that was held in zoning committee today?
It will be attached to the zoning committee agenda. In addition to that, I can go through what the amendments were. You will remember, when you received the information in your NPUs, it referenced mature trees. The word mature was changed to priority. In addition, we received direct feedback from the NPUs where there was the strikeout in the legislation that it was not clear, and that was restruck. And because it is a legislative item, it had to be amended. So those were the amendments that were a part of the legislation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All righty. How do we get sidewalks on Harbin Road? I don't know which one of you wants to.
I do greenways.
Yeah. Tara said not
So
me.
there's a couple of different ways to get sidewalks. So one way is the zoning ordinance requires that properties in certain zoning districts that redevelop or construct new are required to install sidewalks of a certain width, 5 feet. That's one way to get them. If it's a new subdivision that is being created on Harbin Road, then that new subdivision would have to install sidewalks in accordance with the subdivision regulations. Also, there's something called the CIP, where you can make a request to fund sidewalks in your neighborhood, and depending on the available funds, then sidewalks could be installed. So there are various ways to get sidewalks, and I hope any of the ways that I've mentioned may be possible.
Thank you, Kieta. John, it looked like you were about to add something. Or is there anything you need to add?
No, I think Kieta covered it pretty well. I think that those are the primary options. I was just checking to see if there was anything that I could see existing nearby, but I'm not seeing anything. So
Okay. All righty, thank you. Okay, is there something in place to make adjustments on the fly? And this is related to zoning 2.0. For example, assuming changes in Plan A for ADU and increased densification are intended to yield actual full-time permanent dwellings for real people, what can be done to mitigate those whose permitted structure becomes an STR, a short-term rental?
Ooh, there's lots of layers in that question. So first, the CDP does not regulate density or use. The CDP is only the policy document. So through the exercise of the NPU's policies and the exercise of updating the land use map for the particular NPU, then an NPU can identify areas on that land use map where they want to see increased density. Such that they identify those areas, applications that come in to seek a rezoning, then the application will be recommended for approval by staff because there is already a policy in place to increase the density in those particular areas, which is already approved by an NPU. The second thing is with regard to third thing, I think, with regard to short-term rental is a license here in the city of Atlanta. So in order for someone to operate a short-term rental legally, that short-term rental property owner would have to apply for the license, have the license reviewed, and then approved by our Office of Buildings. Did I cover everything?
I think you did. And Miss Jennifer, if that answer was not sufficient, you'll let us know and we'll try to elaborate. Thank you, Kieta. All righty. What are we doing to address real affordable housing? So I don't know if anyone here is the right person to really answer that question because our conversation tonight was mostly around Plan A, Trails ATL, Zoning 2.0, and the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. And our housing director is not part of this session tonight. So is there anything that I should be adding?
Well,
Maybe
I
we
can
can
just say in terms
Pass the
of,
question along.
in terms of trails, I would do that, but I would just say in terms of trails, we have been working in partnership with many of the developers, including the housing authority that owns large areas within the city of Atlanta, to make sure that the areas that they are developing will connect those areas to the trails plan. And so in those conversations, there's quite a bit of affordable housing that is currently being built and will be built according to their plans. But I'm not speaking for them, I'm just speaking for trails.
Okay, thank you. We'll note the question and pass it along, and to the person who submitted that question, if you want to send a separate note so that we know who you are and can get an answer to you, you're welcome to do that as well. All righty, let me just mark that one done. Will there be an all-hands-on meeting that shows how feedback is being integrated into the plans and gaining active feedback?
Can I speak to Parks and Rec plans and trails? The trails plan is an action item under the Activate ATL plan, which too is a subset of Plan A. And so one of the things that we are doing, Activate ATL was approved in December 2021. And so very soon we will be coming to that midpoint. It's the 10-year plan. And so we are going to go back and reflect on what we said we would do and where we are in that. And we are planning to do that next year. As it relates to the Trails ATL plan, Trails ATL has not yet been approved by the City Council. We are hoping to do that after the public hearing on June 4th and its review in CDHS committee and then ultimately the full council. And so we are still in the process of incorporating that information so that we can have a plan. And once we have a plan, then we will review that as a part of our implementation. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to.
Thank you, Tara. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that.
I would just offer Leah that as I mentioned earlier, Plan A, we're anticipating its adoption in the beginning of July by the full City Council, which will formally stop that planning process. But I would note, and Kelly can jump in here as well, is that after Plan A is adopted, there's still work to be done. And part of that, as it relates to making sure that the zoning 2.0 and the Plan A land use patterns in particular work together the way we intended them to work. And so there'll be additional conversations through, at least on the Plan A side, about making sure there isn't any tweaks to be made to Plan A based on zoning 2.0 as it gets continual feedback after the next most recent version gets distributed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I did want to invite all of you, but specifically the person that asked the question about affordable housing. The Department of City Planning is hosting its third Affordable Housing Week. I think the dates are June 23rd through the 25th. It is possibly here at City Hall. We'll have more information out shortly. If you received an email inviting you to this webinar, you'll receive an email about Affordable Housing Week as well. But certainly follow us on social media also for information about any events that we have. But Affordable Housing Week will be held June 23rd through the 25th. And you will have the opportunity to engage with subject matter experts and get a lot more information about affordable housing and how the city supports it. All right. The next question is, Thank you so much, Jim. Love your work. How do we engender the neighborhood to use zoning at the Plan A 2.0 level and think beyond just hyperlocal?
So neighborhoods are hyper-local. Neighborhoods report up to the NPUs. The Plan A, well, currently the Comprehensive Development Plan and the zoning ordinance work together. Plan A and 2.0 will continue to work together. And I think the question may be related to how are changes made on a local level. And that's really a matter of the specific NPU and neighborhood working on or creating a plan to work on your individual land use maps to get the outcomes that you're seeking on those levels.
The next question is also from Jim. MARTA has the next gen plan, but Northwest Atlanta has decreased routes MARTA has decreased routes in Northwest Atlanta while the mayor wants activation of the river. How do we think prospectively at the ARC level rather than just ATL? John, any thoughts on that? Uh-oh, is John frozen? I think John is frozen. He is. All right. So, Jim, we're going to come back to that question and move on to a question for Tara. How do I apply, and hi, Stacy, by the way, how do I apply to add a disc golf park within our green spaces along trails or as an additional recreational opportunity within our park system in terms of consideration to Plan A trails ATL?
So thank you for that question. And disc golf, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with where you might be in the city of Atlanta, but currently the city has one disc golf course at Ferguson Park that really needs some love. And so we are in the process of determining how to use the resources that we have to improve that existing golf course, disc golf course. And then also we will be adding a disc golf course at Melvin Drive. The additional disc golf course and other additional amenities are spelled out in our goals for Activate ATL, Parks and Rec Master Plan. And so we are in the process of adding a new disc golf course. Disc golf courses along trails, we do not have any specific amenities outlined in the Trails ATL plan, but certainly we will be looking to do that as we look at each one of these alignments. And then we're, again, not just disc golf amenities, but other amenities as well. We're looking at how we can utilize the trails network so that we are adding more amenities as we are able to manage and maintain them.
Thank you so much for that. All right, the next question is, I have heard the tree ordinance is under threat of being eliminated. Could you provide an update and action the public could take to protect our tree canopy? Thank you.
Okay, we are not eliminating the tree protection ordinance. It does need a lot of work because it hasn't been updated in a long time. The tree preservation standards and the recompense and several other things that we need to work on. But I have to say that we're writing a zoning ordinance right now. You all know this. And the zoning ordinance and the tree protection ordinance have to align, meaning there can't be any conflicts. And the provisions of the tree protection ordinance cannot contradict the zoning ordinance and cannot take property rights away from people. So, and I guess, and vice versa. So we've got to test this out. We started testing with the current zoning ordinance, and it took us so long to test each zoning district with the TPO that what I think we're going to have to do is possibly adopt part of the tree protection ordinance now and work on the rest later and add more incentives for tree protection, because this way we can make sure that the tree protection ordinance and the zoning ordinance are in alignment. We absolutely cannot have them conflict with each other. And to the person who just typed in the word baloney, you are welcome to come to my office and watch us do this work. We'll be doing it all summer long and into the fall. So, if you want to call me out on something, maybe put your name on it. That'd be great. Thanks.
All righty. Thank you very much, Commissioner. For people who, this is a good question. Not that the other ones weren't good questions, they were. This is an interesting question. For people who live in Atlanta and work outside the city, has there been support or collaboration with surrounding cities in the planning process?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. During the planning process, I'll say that we did not have a lot of direct communication with, for example, unincorporated DeKalb County planners or folks in the city of Decatur or Fulton County for that matter. But when there's more targeted small area planning or neighborhood planning, we typically do engage those relevant agencies going forward. And I would anticipate us doing that again as we start to do more small area planning on a more regular basis. One of the things to keep in mind is that for the majority of the tasks that the city of Atlanta is concerned with about planning its future, the city is very much the central player in those tasks, in those topics. But there are some key relationships that we need to make sure we continue to strengthen and even expand for that matter. It's already been alluded to, we're in the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is what ARC stands for. And so that's a real important organization as it relates to our transportation planning and funding, because that's where a lot of the transportation dollars come through, is the Atlanta Regional Commission, known as ARC. There's also interaction with transportation planning with some of our county partners, as they also, of course, manage their road networks and multimodal networks. But I think that the bigger consideration, from my perspective on a planning process, is to make sure as a baseline that all the agencies that are related to the city of Atlanta, that are either in city government or sister agencies like Invest Atlanta or MARTA or folks like that, they are really well keyed into our planning conversations, and we can get them to the table for our small area planning, more focused conversations. I think if we take care of that and improve upon that, I think we'll be in really good shape, and certainly have to make sure we make our connections to our sister counties and our regional governments. But I think if we take care of our own city agencies, we'll be in really good shape, going forward.
Awesome. Thank you. All righty. Tara, were you going to weigh in on that as well?
Oh, I was gonna say, just that, yes, so, as a part of our initial planning process for Trails ATL, we included, several partners, MARTA, ARC, and other, regional entities. Certainly, the Trails plan includes the Chattahoochee Trails, which is a regional trail that goes above the northernmost point along the Chattahoochee, all the way down to the southernmost point and beyond, for the city of Atlanta. And so we've definitely been engaged and involved in talking to folks about the Trails ATL plan. Our partner in developing this is the Path Foundation, which has built a number of paths around the city of Atlanta, including within Atlanta. So the other piece is that all of this builds from our Activate ATL and the Trails Plan and the 57 focus groups and the additional focus groups that we did with the Trails ATL involve organizations that are not just local to Atlanta. And definitely they're taking those areas around the city and outside of the city into account for building out the Trails Plan. Does it say it's where you said you wanted to go? You want to go to Alabama. We want to get you there on the Silver County Connector. There's no connection right now. We're going to make one for you.
Awesome. Thank you. John, did you have anything to add to that as well? And I saw your note. John is, for the benefit of those that are watching, John is keeping his camera off due to connectivity issues. But John, the question was for people who live in Atlanta and work outside the city. Has there been support or collaboration with surrounding cities in the planning process? I know you all are just getting started, but I want to give you an opportunity to weigh in if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think there is a lot of, especially from a connectivity perspective, you know, from one perspective, we, as the City of Atlanta DOT, are responsible for only the city streets in the City of Atlanta, which does not include GDOT streets. But there's obviously a need to make sure that some of the investments in infrastructure that we're doing on the city side connects to projects and infrastructure that is happening outside of the city, right? So if that's a trail or some infrastructure that's happening in Decatur or East Point, that we're making sure that we kind of connect to some of those pieces of infrastructure too. So yeah, I think it definitely makes sense. You're right that we are just kind of getting going, but we will look to continue to partner with neighboring jurisdictions when it comes to identifying those projects, as well as thinking about, you know, how do some other modes of transportation, like the scooters or dockless mobility devices, which are currently only allowed to operate in the city of Atlanta, but thinking about bike share, which previously existed in the city of Atlanta. We know neighboring jurisdictions have some interest in that. So we do have to zoom out a little bit in thinking about how we better collaborate with neighboring jurisdictions.
Awesome. Don't go too far, John. My next question is for you also. When you referenced safety, what specific measures are being considered to enhance secure travel along the proposed transportation routes? Also, when is the projected groundbreaking date for
so I
these
think
plans?
Yeah, to answer the second one, I think the timeline. So we're kicking off the transportation plan in the fall. So we're hoping to have a consultant on board to kick off in the fall, but we're anticipating that the plan itself is going to be an 18-month effort. So hopefully we're wrapping up in the latter part of 2026 or the beginning of 2027. So it's going to be roughly an 18-month duration, if that answers the question about schedule. And then from safety perspective, you know, our focus is on eliminating traffic fatalities and severe injuries. Historically, you know, transportation looked at eliminating crashes, which can just be property damage crashes. Our focus is really on those fatal and severe injury crashes. And the vast majority of those crashes are the result of speed. It's very difficult people are much more likely to die at higher rates of speed. So for a lot of our work, it means looking at engineering and design for how we have built our streets to make sure that people are driving at safe speeds. And then the design of the street can encourage people to behave the speed limit or not, depending on how it's designed. If you give somebody a 5-lane roadway, you are encouraging them to go at faster speeds. So that's the type of countermeasure that we're looking to employ, is reducing unsafe driving behavior through engineering and design.
Awesome. I thank you, John.
One thing I would add, Leah, to that, I mentioned earlier that one of the areas that my team focuses on is public space, which is maybe a wonky planning term, but it really talks about how people engage those in-between spaces in their lives. So they're not at their property, they're not at their house, at their apartment, they're not at work, they're on the sidewalk, they're walking to the park that Parks has been developing. And then there's a lot of intersection about what you do with the public space with what John's team will be focusing on, because one of the biggest assets the city of Atlanta has and holds on behalf of its residents and folks who live here is the right of way, right? That is a asset the city has to very carefully and thoughtfully manage, and it has to be allocated in a way that reflects safety and those options we all agreed upon earlier that were really important. So I think safety is both it is the physical way you manage that really important asset, which is our right of way and our property that's used for transportation work.
I appreciate that, Doug. Thank you so much. Tara, is there sufficient green space within the city limits to support the creation of all of these trails? These 525 trails. What considerations?
525 minus 80, because we already.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
So,
You said 80
yeah.
existing. Let me give you the second part to that question.
Okay.
What considerations are being made to ensure safety along the trails?
And I've really not said a lot about safety, but let me start with the space. Yes, there is sufficient room to add these trails. Much of the trails that we are talking about building are in existing easements and right of ways, spaces that are already available. Then there are other spaces that we know, for example, that we are going to have to acquire more land just by virtue of the existing need right now of Parks and Rec. And we did that assessment as a part of the Activate ATL plan. So yes, there is, and yes, we do believe that we can do that. And we do believe that we can do it either in concert with, either by land acquisition or working with developers moving forward, and some that already have spaces in places where people would most likely use trails. But also doing that so that we reduce major reliance on trails being where we have to acquire single family property or take easements from existing homeowners. So it's really much about the public right of ways, easements, and then safety. This is definitely a concern of Parks and Rec in general. Thanks to the millage, we have been able to add the park rangers to our parks, and we expect that those rangers will also be operating on trails. We are talking about expanding lighting in trails so that people can see on trails, and then also cameras. Again, thanks to the millage, we have been already exploring this and doing it successfully in our existing parks. We will intend to expand that into the trails network as well.
All right, thank you so much. John, since you're back, I'm gonna go back to that question that I asked earlier. MARTA has the next gen plan, but Northwest Atlanta has decreased routes while the mayor wants activation of the river. How do we think prospectively at the ARC level rather than just the ATL level?
I think there are a few ways to think about answering that question. I think the first thing would be for all, if the goal is to have increased transit service in the ARC region, it would be for those counties to agree to tax themselves the way that the city of Atlanta has, and Fulton County and Clayton County and DeKalb, and by being a part of MARTA. So certainly welcome additional counties being a part of MARTA. I think if we want more transit, then we have to provide more funding for it, right? And MARTA is one of the largest transit agencies in the country that gets no funding from the state government, meaning that the locals are having to fund it themselves. And the city of Atlanta funds MARTA more than anybody else. So 1.5 cents for every dollar in sales tax goes to MARTA. So I feel like it's not the city of Atlanta's responsibility necessarily to fund transit for the region. Those other jurisdictions have to provide some of the funding themselves. And the other thing that I would say is that I don't know that, the whole concept of the bus network redesign is not about the number of routes, but it's more about making some of those routes higher frequency. So the goal is to shift from a coverage model, which means touching more places at lower frequency, to concentrating that transit investment in fewer places, but at much higher frequency, right? So these are bus routes that you can plan your day around, that come every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes. And so I think the collateral that MARTA has provided on the website does, on the bus network redesign or the Next Gen Bus website, provides a good look at how people want to see how their neighborhood or their area compares in the existing conditions in the future. And I think, providing more frequent transit service, this is my perspective, this is not City of Atlanta perspective, but we, to make transit useful for people, it has to be more frequent. You can't expect people to plan their lives around a bus that comes every 30 minutes, but a bus that comes every 10 or 15 minutes, that's something that you can plan your day around.
All right, thank you, John. All right, we are winding down to the last couple of questions. I am hearing lots of requests for citizen input, and these webinars are now on a quarterly basis. However, the experience we just had with TPO and the administrative variance for setback shows that there is still room for improvement. Can you commit to taking this to the next level? For instance, we should get updates from the city on how MPU input is incorporated into legislation. Can you commit, and I'm skipping the narrative part if you don't mind, can you commit to helping improve the transparency and increase feedback to the community?
Absolutely, absolutely. When I read through your entire post, and great questions and great follow-up. Yes, I would like it when we are presenting legislation, if we could explain kind of how it's changed along the way, based on the feedback we've received, because what we heard from the MPUs was so valuable. And yes, we can do that. Also, I was wondering about how sometimes it wanted to make sure that the legislation is always hyperlinked to agendas. So I'm going to look into that further for you.
Okay. Appreciate that. And I know we had internally some conversation and did some work to actually show the input that we received from the public and how we incorporated it into the amendment. So that it definitely, and I've seen some of the comments from folks saying that it doesn't matter, they're not hearing us anyway, or it's not, but we actually did collect a lot of feedback.
And we documented a lot of that, but what we maybe didn't do that we could have done is we could have put that into staff reports or somehow linked it to the legislation so we could do that.
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes it's helpful to see how things have changed along the way and why it's changed.
Yeah, that is certainly one way we can get the word out a little better. And yeah, that was good feedback. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Commissioner. All right, the TPO concerns me the most. Oh, I'm sorry, there wasn't a question on that one. We'll hold that until the end if we have time. Will the new recompense formula have any significant increases from what has been in place for quite some time.
Okay, I guess I better keep my camera on. Okay, so, well, I had my show last time. These guys, they should,
Yes.
right? Okay. Yes, the new recompense formula it doubles. It doubles the recompense. I know that the ordinance that is being held by CDHS right now has that in it. And also, I think that because your concern was about the impact of the increased fees. Yeah. I know there was some concern about the impact of the increased recompense fees on affordable housing. And we are looking at that as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All righty. And it looks like that's it for the questions. I don't see any other questions. There were a few comments that weren't questions. I see two of them, so I'll go ahead and read those out. 1.5 cents of 8.5 goes to MARTA. Huge, but many of our streets are driven by out-of-town drivers. So true. Decreased routes are decreased ridership, especially if they don't point to rail. Rail needs to connect to the river, no question, and thank you for your consideration. Thank you for looking into how the amendments are hyperlinked in, sorry, I'm not saying this right, but thanks for looking into it. And we are definitely frustrated that changes occur that we do not see. So I thank you for those comments as well. And any other questions that you may have, I believe we have answered every single question that was posted in the Q&A. If you have other questions that we either didn't get to or you think of a question later, please do not hesitate to email us and we'll get questions to you for sure. We'll get those questions to you. I do want to ask John, just based on some of what I saw in the chat, in the Q&A. John, would you mind announcing or giving more information about the Cascade Road Complete Streets community meeting that you have coming up?
Sure. Yeah, there were a couple of questions about that. So I just wanted to put that in the chat, but it's a public meeting just for updates on the Cascade Road Complete Streets project. That's Tuesday, June 10th at Hillside International Truth Center. That's 2450 Cascade Road, and that's starting at 6 p.m. So for anybody who has questions about the Cascade project, that is your best opportunity, and you're going to have a lot of ATL-DOT representation there. So they're going to best be able to answer any questions about Cascade. And then there was one other question that I put an answer to in the chat, and I spoke too soon about Harbin Road sidewalks. So there is a Moving Atlanta Forward funded project for Harbin Road sidewalks for the person that asked that question. So in addition to the potential options that Kiana mentioned, there is the fact that it's already got a funded sidewalk project. So, and I think I put the link to the page where you can find out more information about the project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to point out, one of my colleagues just pointed out that we should have pointed out that CDHS stands for Community Development and Human Services Committee, and that is the committee of council that has purview over the Department of City Planning, and will be reviewing the Plan A, and I think Trails ATL goes to them too, right? And yeah, and Trails ATL. Is there anything else I'm missing, y'all?
I do want to add that if you want to read the plan for Trails ATL, please go to trailsatl.com.
Trailsatl.com. That reminds me, I saw, once we answer a question, it moves it out of the open question area, but there was a commendation or accolades for Eric's work that I wanted to read. I don't see it now yet. It's just too far down somewhere, but you have it? You see it? I'm at the very bottom. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Very pleasantly surprised by Eric Gardner's willingness to include ongoing community input into the Trails Atlanta plan. I hope the city will honor his commitment and that the final legislation will include the plan that he shared with us. If this happens, it sets a new bar, and that's a good thing. NPU feedback being taken to heart. So very glad to, and I will say I heard that a few times about Trails ATL and all of the many, many meetings that Eric attended. I will personally share the same words of commendation to my colleagues on the Plan A team that also attended, I don't know how many meetings, but a lot of neighborhood meetings, NPU meetings. Do you have a number, Doug?
Over 50.
Over 50 meetings. That's a lot of community meetings on Plan A. So, all right, good stuff. I thank you all. And to our panelists, if you have anything else that you'd like to say in closing, please do. No? All right, wonderful. I do want to make sure that we invite your participation. On June 28th, we will host Urban Plan Academy, which is a really great opportunity to learn how development works using Legos and a challenge to develop a community with certain scenarios that are distributed to you. So it's a great class. Strongly encourage you to register for that. If registration is still open at npuatlanta.org. And then the Community Development Human Services Public Hearing, that's what you're talking about. I just got that. But the Plan A CDP,
And Trails ATL.
And Trails ATL will be heard at the public hearing for CDHS, or Community Development Human Services Committee, on June 4th. Strongly encourage all of you, especially if you are supportive of Trails ATL and Plan A, but we invite your participation either way. Please do come to the hearing on June 4th. And then the Cascade Road Complete Street meeting that John just talked about will be held on June 10th. And of course, if you just want to get out of the house and move around in a car-free environment and interact with the community and businesses and organizations, et cetera, I hope to run into you at Atlanta Streets Alive on June 22nd. And I think that is it. My screen didn't change. Oh, there we go. All right. So thank you all so much for being here. Please don't hesitate to reach out if we can answer any other questions for you. And we hope you have an amazing evening. Thank you again for being here with us.
Good night.
Good night.